My name is Doug Diehl. I'm the pastor of Crossroads Baptist Church here in San Antonio. And my salvation experience happened when I was pretty young. We were having a revival at our church, and I just realized in the course of that I needed the Lord. And so I talked to my mom about it, and I believe it was a Saturday night, if I remember correctly, and prayed to receive Christ, and then made that decision public. My call to ministry is a little bit kind of crazy, a little bit more dramatic. And when I tell it, I realize people, might just not know what to do with this. But I was actually in the 11th grade in high school, and I was attending my a revival that my youth minister was preaching, and he had invited me to give my testimony that night. I was active in the youth group, and but had not really ever even contemplated ministry as a vocation for me. And I remember very clearly as sitting in the service that night, and my youth minister was preaching at this little church in Oklahoma, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it was almost as if my youth minister stopped while he was preaching, looked at me, and said, I'm calling you to be God's calling you to be a pastor. But it was like God speaking to me. He never said that. His sermon wasn't even about that. But it's one of the 2 or 3 times in my life where I really, I've felt a lot of times like God was communicating with me or speaking with me. But there's only been 2 or 3 times that I've really felt like, oh my goodness, that felt like the voice of God in my ears. So that was it. And from that point forward, my course was set, and I've been really in ministry almost ever since. In one sense, I don't feel like I can point to any great achievements that other people would say, wow, that's a great achievement. In the course of ministry, I think I helped a couple of churches recover from some tough days. Didn't make them mega churches or anything like that, but I think I was able to come in and provide stability and encouragement and hope. We've been able, at my current church, we've been able to start a number of churches, and some of them locally, some of them beyond locally, some of them even internationally that we've started or been very helpful in the beginning stages of a young church. That's it. Nothing really, that I know people would point to as being terribly impressive. I think staying the course sometimes is achievement number one. I think advice for younger ministers would be to be careful about the expectations you set for yourself. Trust God's process in your life. You don't have to be the greatest pastor, the greatest preacher, the greatest church builder that ever walked the face of the earth. I think too many young pastors set themselves up for failure by not just trusting that God, you be faithful and God will do what He needs to do in and through your life. It doesn't mean you don't work hard, and it doesn't mean you don't set goals and you don't try to achieve things, but you have to always, I think, alongside of that, maintain this sense that Um, you know, this is really going to depend on God, and the achievement of these goals will be more His than mine. Kind of like what James refers to when he says, you know, you say next year I'm going to go to this place and I'm going to do this business and I'm going to accomplish these things. And James says, you're not being wise. You ought to say, if the Lord wills, you'll do those things. And I think that's what he's talking about there. He's talking about this sense that we need to trust Him for whatever success, whatever progress, and so on that we're going to make. And we need to allow ourselves the freedom to be faithful and to work hard, but to accept what God provides along the way. Well, there are probably a lot of them. The first one that comes to mind is a baptismal experience. One of the things that I didn't realize is that some people are more buoyant than other people. So some people, you know, they go right underwater, no problem. Other people float. I mean, these are people that, you know, don't need the Dead Sea to be able to float without paddling or anything. And one time I was baptizing an older lady, and I told her a certain way to hold her hands because that's just what I'm comfortable with, and that gives me a place to kind of hold on to her wrist. And if by chance she doesn't want to go under the water, because, you know, we Baptists, we believe that if you don't go all the way under the water, it's not a real baptism. So I showed her all that. Well, then when she got up there, she didn't do what she was supposed to do with her hands. So I did the best I could to lean her backwards, and she was one of those buoyant people. You know, I couldn't get her under the water by just kind of pulling on her neck. And of course, this is a lady, right? So I have to be careful about certain things. And so I put my hand up, kind of up here, and to make a long story short, I choked her, and she started gasping and blubbering in the water, you know, and so on. And so I realized, you know, I'm going to have to be real careful about making sure that people give me a place to grip and a place to push if necessary when I baptize.